The announcement rippled through Haven Falls Station like a shockwave. Kale had arrived. Within an hour, the main thoroughfare was nearly empty. Shops closed. Families retreated to their quarters. Security forces positioned themselves at careful distance, ready to respond, but clearly hoping they wouldn't need to. Marcus Reed heard the commotion from his garden, a small plot he maintained in one of the station's agricultural sections, growing vegetables and flowers that served no purpose beyond giving him something peaceful to tend. He'd been here for 5 years, living quietly, bothering no one. He looked up as the noise on the main concourse increased, fearful voices, hurried footsteps, the sound of businesses sealing their doors. Through the transparent partitions separating his garden from the public walkway, he could see people fleeing. Then he saw why. She walked down the center of the thoroughfare with the confident stride of someone who'd never needed to check their surroundings for threats. Tall, even by Velrani standards, with scars that told stories of combat survived. Her armor was functional rather than decorative, worn in places, repaired in others, marked with the kind of damage that came from actual warfare rather than ceremony. Kale, the Reaper of Talvaris. Marcus knew the reputation. Everyone in the settled systems knew it. She'd fought in a dozen wars, killed hundreds in single combat, survived situations that destroyed entire military units. She was a living legend, the kind of warrior that other warriors feared. People cleared the entire street before her. Vendors abandoned their stalls. A security officer actually stepped backward when she glanced in his direction. Marcus watched this procession of fear for a moment, then returned his attention to the tomato plants he'd been examining. They had some kind of nutrient deficiency, leaves yellowing at the edges, and he needed to adjust the soil composition. He was measuring fertilizer when a shadow fell across his work. Marcus looked up to find Kale standing directly in front of his garden partition, staring at him with an expression somewhere between confusion and something harder to define. He nodded politely, the kind of acknowledgement you'd give any stranger passing by, and returned to measuring the fertilizer. The shadow didn't move. Marcus looked up again. Kale was still there, now clearly studying him with intense focus. Her hand rested near her weapon, not threateningly, just present. "Can I help you with something?" Marcus asked, his tone the same as if he were speaking to anyone requesting assistance. For a long moment, Kale didn't respond. Then, "You're not afraid." "Should I be? Everyone else on this station is currently hiding in their quarters. You're gardening. The tomatoes don't care about your reputation. They just need proper nutrients." Marcus gestured at the yellowing leaves. "I'm thinking nitrogen deficiency. What do you think?" Kale stared at him. "Did you not hear me? I'm Kale, the Reaper of Talvaris." "I heard. The announcements were hard to miss." Marcus turned back to his plants. "Are you planning to interfere with my gardening?" "No." "Then I don't see the problem." Kale stood there for another long moment, clearly processing something that didn't fit her usual experience. Then she opened the garden partition and stepped inside, a move that would have sent most people scrambling backward. Marcus simply moved his fertilizer bag so she wouldn't trip over it. "Why aren't you afraid?" Kale asked directly. Marcus looked up at her, really looked this time, making eye contact. Her heart rate was steady. Her hands weren't shaking. This wasn't performance to hide terror. This was genuine calm. "Should I give you the answer you're expecting or the truth?" Marcus asked. "The truth." "Then give me a moment to finish this measurement. The plants have been waiting long enough." To Kale's continued confusion, Marcus completed his fertilizer calculation, added the appropriate amount to the soil, and carefully watered the tomato plants before standing and facing her directly. "Now," he said, "what was your question?" "Why aren't you afraid?" Kale repeated, her voice carrying the edge that usually made people stumble over their answers. "Because you're just standing in my garden right now," Marcus said calmly. "Not threatening me, not attacking anyone, just existing in proximity to my tomatoes. Should I be afraid of a conversation? I've killed hundreds in combat. survived battles that destroyed entire military units. I'm known across a dozen systems as someone you don't approach without excellent reason. Kale moved closer, deliberately intimidating. I could kill you in seconds. Probably true, Marcus agreed. Are you planning to? What? Are you planning to kill me? Right now in this moment, is that your intention? No. Then why would I waste energy on fear of something that isn't happening? Kale had faced warriors, criminals, soldiers, and diplomats across her career. She'd intimidated hardened fighters and terrified experienced commanders. Not one of them had responded like this, with calm rationality that treated her threat level as a theoretical rather than immediate concern. You're either very brave or very stupid, Kale said. Neither, just selective about where I direct my fear. Marcus gestured to a bench he'd built in the garden. You're welcome to sit if you're staying. Standing for long conversations gets uncomfortable. Kale sat, not because he'd suggested it, but because this entire interaction was so far outside her normal experience that she needed to understand it. Marcus sat across from her, completely relaxed, no defensive postures or hidden tension. I need to understand, Kale said. Everyone fears me. Warriors fear me. Criminals fear me. Civilians flee when I arrive. She gestured at his calm demeanor. Unaffected, why? Would it help if I explained my perspective on fear? Yes. Marcus considered how to articulate it. Fear is useful when it protects you from immediate danger. If a ship is exploding, fear makes you run. If someone is shooting at you, fear makes you take cover. But fear of abstract threat, fear of what might happen if circumstances were different, that's not protective. That's just suffering in advance of events that may never occur. I'm not an abstract threat. I'm a concrete danger. Are you threatening me? Not currently. Then currently, you're just a person sitting in my garden having a conversation. I'll respond to actual threats if they materialize. I won't waste energy being afraid of potential threats that exist only in imagination. Kale had never been treated as a potential threat that exists only in imagination in her entire adult life. This is either exceptional courage or exceptional foolishness. It's neither. It's just, Marcus paused, considering. It's what I learned after facing something worse than any warrior could threaten me with. What could be worse than someone who's killed hundreds? Someone who's lost everything. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes darkened slightly. After you've survived the actual worst thing, most other fears seem optional. Kale leaned forward, genuinely curious now rather than just confused or offended. Tell me. Why? Because I need to understand why you're not afraid when everyone else is. And because, she paused, because no one has ever responded to me this way, and I need to know if it's genuine or performance. It's genuine, Marcus said, but the explanation is not pleasant. I've survived unpleasant things. I can handle your story. Marcus studied her for a moment, then nodded. 5 years ago, I was a medic, combat zone on Viridian IV during the colonial uprising. My job was treating casualties and helping evacuate civilians when combat areas became too dangerous. You were military, medical corps, non-combat role. Marcus's voice remained steady but quiet. My wife and daughter were on the station where I was assigned. When evacuation orders came, they were loaded onto transport ships with other civilian families. Kale already knew where this was going, but she stayed silent. The transport convoy was hit by artillery meant for military targets, 37 ships destroyed, no survivors. Marcus's hands didn't shake, but his voice carried the weight of someone who'd told this story to himself countless times. I was on the surface, treating wounded soldiers, when the news came through. Spent the next 6 hours finishing my shift because people still needed medical care. Then I requisitioned a shuttle and went to the debris field. You went looking for them? Yes. I knew they were gone, the orbital scans were clear, but I went anyway. Spent 20 minutes trying to revive my daughter after I found her body. Knew she was dead, couldn't stop trying. Marcus met Kale's eyes directly. After that, fear of being killed by a warrior just doesn't register the same way. You're dangerous, yes. You could kill me, yes. But you can't take anything from me that I haven't already lost. Kale sat in absolute silence. She'd expected bravado, expected hidden strength or false courage, expected performance designed to impress or intimidate. She'd gotten none of those things, just honest, weary truth from someone who'd survived something worse than her reputation. Fear requires having something precious you might lose, Marcus continued. I'm past that. You could kill me and he paused, considering. I'd be dead. That's not particularly frightening after you've already lost the only things that made living feel worthwhile. Then why keep living? Kale asked quietly. If you've lost everything precious, why not? Stop, Marcus smiled slightly but without humor. I thought about it for months. Every day was a negotiation with myself about whether continuing was worth the effort. Eventually, I realized that stopping would make their deaths meaningless. If I gave up, then they'd have died and I'd have died, and nothing would remain. If I kept going, even just going through motions, even just tending a garden on a remote station, then their lives had meaning through my continuation. So you garden. So I garden and I exist. And I don't waste energy being afraid of things that are less frightening than the reality I've already survived. Kale was quiet for a long time, processing Marcus's answer. Finally, she spoke. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Marcus accepted the condolence simply, without performance or deflection. I understand, Kale said, more than you might expect. Your reputation suggests you've seen significant combat. My reputation comes from a single battle, 3 days on Talvaris where my entire unit was surrounded and slaughtered. Kale's voice carried its own weight now, matching Marcus's earlier tone. 47 soldiers under my command, all dead within the first 6 hours. I fought for 3 days straight, killed dozens of enemy combatants, finally broke through their lines and escaped. You survived. Yes, and everyone who sees me sees that survival. They see the kills I made, the battle I won through sheer refusal to die. They call me the Reaper, the unstoppable warrior. Kale's expression was bitter. They don't see that I lost 47 people who trusted me to keep them alive. They don't see that I spent 3 days watching friends die while I survived. They don't see that every person who fears me now reminds me that I'm alive because they're dead. Marcus understood immediately. You survived when everyone else didn't, and the survival feels like theft. Yes. Kale looked at him with something like relief at being understood. Everyone who fears me thinks I'm dangerous, invincible, deadly. They don't realize I'm just, she paused, alone. Everyone who knew me before Talvaris is dead. Everyone who knows me after sees only the legend. Nobody sees the woman who lost everyone and just kept going because stopping would mean their deaths were meaningless. The parallel to Marcus's own reasoning was obvious and profound. We're both survivors of unsurvivable losses, Marcus said quietly. Both learned to keep existing when easier paths were available. Yes, and you're the first person in 5 years who's seen me as, Kale struggled for words, as a person, not as the Reaper, not as a threat or a legend or a weapon. Just someone shaped by their past, same as you. We're all just people shaped by what we've survived, Marcus said. Your past made you a warrior. Mine made me a gardener, different paths from similar pain. Kale stood, moving to look at the tomato plants Marcus had been tending. These are important to you. They give me something to care for, something that needs me but can't be taken away by artillery or warfare. There, Marcus paused. Safe to love. That matters after you've lost everything you love to violence. I have nothing like that, nothing safe to care about. Everything I invest in either dies or fears me. Then perhaps you need a garden. Kale turned to look at him, startled. What? I'm serious. You need something that exists outside your reputation, something that responds to you as a person rather than as a legend. Plants are excellent for that. They don't care about your past, don't fear your reputation. They just need proper care and respond accordingly. You're suggesting the Reaper of Talvaris should take up gardening. I'm suggesting a woman who's lost everything and carried that loss alone for 5 years might benefit from having something alive that depends on her care rather than fears her presence. Marcus gestured at the garden. There's a plot next to mine that's unclaimed. Station regulations allow anyone to request gardening space. You could. I'm not staying on this station long term. Then tend it while you're here. See if having something that needs you rather than fears you makes any difference to how you feel. Cale studied him carefully. Why would you offer this? Because you asked why I'm not afraid, and I told you the truth. I've survived worse than your threat, but the deeper truth is, I recognize survival in someone else. You're carrying loss the same way I am, just expressed through different actions. If tending plants helps me exist with that loss, maybe it could help you too. You're very strange, Marcus Reed. I've been told that. The offer stands regardless. Cale considered this. I may take you up on it. Not today, but, she paused. I may return, to talk if nothing else. You're the first person in years who's seen me as something other than my reputation. The garden is always here, so am I usually. As Cale moved toward the partition to leave, she stopped. You asked earlier if I was planning to kill you. Yes. I want you to know I wasn't. I'm not. The thought never occurred to me as a serious option. I came here because your lack of fear was confusing, and I needed to understand it. Not because I was considering violence. I know, hell, because someone carrying the kind of loss you described doesn't casually add to it without reason. You've killed in combat, yes, but you're not a killer seeking victims. You're a survivor managing loss through a reputation that keeps people distant. Marcus met her eyes. I understand that too. Cale nodded slowly. I will return to talk. Maybe to try this gardening concept you're suggesting. But mainly, she paused. Mainly because you see me as a person rather than a legend, and I've forgotten what that feels like. I'll be here. She left then, walking back through the station with the same confident stride, but something in her bearing had shifted slightly. Less the performance of intimidation, more just walking. Marcus returned to his tomato plants, making mental notes about which plot he'd recommend to Cale when she returned. Because she would return, he was certain of that. Two people carrying unsurvivable losses had recognized each other, and that recognition created connection too valuable to abandon. His lack of fear hadn't come from ignorance or bravado. It came from having already faced the worst, from understanding that some people wear fearsome reputations as armor against a pain too profound to process publicly. Cale was dangerous, yes. A warrior with a legendary kill count, yes. But she was also just a woman shaped by loss, carrying survival as both achievement and burden, desperately needing someone to see her as more than her reputation. Marcus had seen that, had responded to the person rather than the legend. And in doing so, he'd given Cale something she hadn't experienced in 5 years.